For those of you joining over on YouTube, getting ready to go live here on TikTok, getting all set up. I'm gonna wait for people to come in. Gonna be talking news, politics like I normally do. Got some bigger news today about the cases with Donald Trump being dismissed out of Washington, D.C. in the Florida documents case. We found out about Donald Trump's day one tariff plan, things like that. So we are waiting for people to come into the room now. I think we're going to have TJ, the plumber, our moderator, my moderator, joining in. For those of you guys joining, we are talking news, politics like I normally do. We got some news today that the cases in Washington, D.C. and the Florida documents case against Donald Trump are dropped. There's TJ the plumber. He's my only moderator so far. Good to see TJ in the chat. We found out that Jack Smith has asked for both cases to be dropped, both the D.C. election interference case and the classified documents case in Florida. And those requests were granted. Now, they were granted with prejudice, which means those cases could be brought back at a later point in time. Those cases will get a chance to come back at any point after Donald Trump is no longer president. This was probably the best outcome after Donald Trump had won the election that we could have hoped for, because the other option was Donald Trump just letting the case ride out till he became president, it not getting dismissed, and then he would have had his people ask for a dismissal with prejudice, which means they could never be brought back up again, etc. So there is a chance these cases could come back at a later point in time. So Jack Smith did ask for them to be dismissed with prejudice. However, there will be a report yet between now and the end of the Biden administration about what Jack Smith found, all of his evidence, etc. And we are waiting to see what that report entails, and that should have a lot of the evidence involved, etc., and Jack Smith's justifications for bringing the charges, etc. No, those charges aren't gone for good. They are dismissed with prejudice, which means they can come back at a later time. And those charges aren't gone. They will come back. Potentially, if he is still alive after the end of his term, if he gets removed early, who knows? You could see something where if Donald Trump doesn't make it through the end of his term and the Republicans remove him, that the DOJ under J.D. Vance could bring the charges back themselves. It is entirely possible. Or whoever wins the presidency in 2028 could revive these cases. They're not gone for good. They are on hold. This was just the best outcome for putting them on hold. Some people have asked, why didn't Jack Smith just suspend the case and basically ask for a 4-year delay? And basically that would have given Donald Trump the ability to have them dismissed without them being able to come back later on. Kate says he won't last 4 years, which is a good thing. Yeah, there's a good chance. There is a good chance that he doesn't last 4 years on his own. That he's either medically not going to be able to continue, where he doesn't make it. He could pass because of natural causes. He is 78 years old. not in the best physical condition. You can tell that by looking at him. You can tell that by how he speaks, etc. Yeah, he will not be healthy enough for 4 years. The question is going to more or less become, will his health sideline him to where he has to step down on his own, or will J.D. Vance have to push him out with the 25th Amendment? Kate is also an Iowan. Glad there's two sane people here. Yeah, there's a few of us. There used to be a lot more of us. I mean, Iowa went blue twice for Obama, went blue for Gore. We used to be a blue or a purple state. Ever since Donald Trump came around, we went red, and I don't understand how we shifted so far right, especially when policies from Donald Trump have hurt us like they have. Coffee Man says, keep up the good work, Eric. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But these cases, while they have been dismissed, and it's disappointing, they're not gone for good. They're not gone for good. They could come back should Donald Trump survive out his term. Artie asks, do I think if there was cheating in the election? I don't see any significant evidence of cheating, and I don't want to get caught up in the emotion or the conspiracy theory of it. If I see evidence, yeah, I'll tell you, it still doesn't make a lot of sense to me how this came about. What I think happened, it was a combination of several things. One, 2020's voting was made really easy because of the pandemic. Almost every state mailed you everything you needed to do. And you could mail your ballot from your house. You never had to go anywhere. And now that you had to go back and do, you had to go to vote. You had to go up down to your courthouse and get your absentee ballot or to vote in person early, etc. Since it was made more difficult, I think some people didn't vote that way. Other people protested because of the two wars going on that we're not part of, but we are financially supporting because they are our allies. So they refused to vote for Kamala Harris because of Joe Biden supporting our allies. Some people were pissed about Kamala Harris becoming the nominee when Joe Biden stepped aside. And I say this in all my lives, and I'm going to say it again. To those people, I ask the same question. Would you be still mad about how she became the nominee with no primary, etc., in July, if on that date Joe Biden had died instead of just said, I'm not running for re-election? Because we would be in the same situation. She would have still been finishing the race. The only difference is she would have been president of the United States, not the vice president with the president saying he's not going to run. We voted for Joe Biden knowing that he might not survive 4 more years. When knowing Kamala Harris could take over. That was always the backup plan. Were you that delusional that you thought she could end up, not that he could survive, and it was, that she was never going to become president? That's almost delusional. The odds of him sweeping the swing states was 35 billion to 1. I don't know where you get those odds from. Coffeeman says, let's give a big finger to Merrick Garland. Yeah, I would agree. Merrick Garland sat on the Trump investigations for 2 years because he didn't want to appear political. He was playing old school politics by saying, you know what, we're not going to have gone forward with it, and we need to take our time to and not look at it because he just beat Donald Trump in an election. He sat on that indictment. Hang on, whoa, my phone's flying here. For 2 years. When Biden stepped aside, couldn't there have been another Democratic candidate? Yes and no. The problem was there is there was deadlines that they had to have a nominee approved by the Democratic Party to get on their state ballot, and those states were not extending deadlines, and those deadlines were going to be ahead of the DNC convention. Period. So they only had like a week and a half to come up with a new candidate. And beyond that, as I keep saying, the idea was Joe Biden stepped aside. If he had died, Kamala would have been the next person up anyway. She made sense. Plus, with her, all the campaign money he had was on the Biden-Harris campaign. She automatically got access to all of that campaign money. He couldn't have transferred that money to anywhere else. What do I know about the Article 5 convention? I believe that's the convention of states. They don't have nearly enough states to do that. The convention of states is basically, the way I understand it is, enough states pass something in their state legislature. I believe it is 38 states. And they end up proposing or removing articles or amendments to the Constitution. They can go either way. And they're trying to say, well, we're going to get enough states together to go ahead and do a convention and modify the Constitution and add in some amendments we want, get rid of some other amendments, etc. And anything could be up for grabs if they were to do that. None of them would necessarily be safe. If they did a convention and they decided to once again get rid of, the 21st Amendment that repealed prohibition, prohibition would be back on. If they wanted to go back and get rid of the freedom of speech, they could potentially. But they just don't have nearly enough states to handle any of that. And it's a long shot. It's their long shot hope of passing a whole bunch of amendments to the Constitution to have so they can get their entire way. And I just don't see it happening. Same with I don't see takes 34. Well, even if you go with all the states Donald Trump has won, he only won 28. And they don't have control of the state legislatures in all of those states. They just don't have the numbers to pass any sort of constitutional convention. It's never happened. They've never done it since the Constitution has been written. And Havoc is wrong. The Bill of Rights can be amended. Any amendment can be amended. Coffee Man says it doesn't matter who the Democratic candidate would have been. The choice was democracy versus freedom. Well, yes. Problem is, I think any other Democratic candidate probably would have been a much better run against Donald Trump, just because they wouldn't have had the weight of the Biden administration, and Donald Trump and his campaign were able to tie Kamala Harris to all of the perceived negatives of the Biden administration. James says they made changing the Constitution really hard for a good reason. Exactly. It takes 67 senators and 325 or something like that members of the House of Representatives, whatever 2/3 comes up to. And beyond that, then it takes 38 states to pass one constitutional amendment. And most of those amendments, when they get ratified by Congress and they get passed back to the states to be ratified and added to the Constitution, it takes, they have a time limit. A lot of times they'll say must be ratified within 4 years or 7 years or 10 or whatever. And a lot of them never get passed because they can't get enough states to agree within that time frame, whatever that deadline is. Modifying there's a reason there's only ever been 27 amendments to the Constitution, and two of them are directly related as far as the, was it 19th and 21st, when both were prohibition. It takes years to modify the Constitution, which is why I keep saying there are going to be elections in 2026 for the midterms. Those are going to happen. There will be an election in 2028. Donald Trump will not be able to get an extended term. Congress can't pass anything to give him an extended term. They don't have the votes. And they're not going to be able to do something with executive orders because executive orders can't override the Constitution. It just can't. It's not in our framework that it would work. If he tries it, it goes to court. Even this corrupt Supreme Court would draw a line somewhere, if nothing else, than to protect themselves in their own power. This Supreme Court, if Donald Trump wrote an executive order today saying presidential terms are now 10 years, this Supreme Court would laugh at him and say unconstitutional. Tom Jr. says, but Trump could be VP. No, he can't. Because the 11th Amendment says you cannot be VP if you are ineligible to be president. And after this term, Donald Trump would be ineligible to be president again. It would be very quickly challenged in a court if he tried to run for VP. It would be very quickly challenged because it would create all sorts of issues if he were to run as, say, Vance's VP. At most, he could serve 2 years, and he wouldn't. It just wouldn't work. He's going to be so inept. Yeah, exactly. And as the Rational Boomer says on his podcast, and I say too, Donald Trump has nothing to do, or he's got nothing to help the Republicans with. He can't run again. He can't run, so he can't run in 2028. He might be able to help them get some seats in the midterms, but that's it. But if he crashes the economy, Republicans are going to have to give up the midterms entirely because they're going to get smoked. You read that there are no rules in an Article 5 convention stated in the Constitution. As far as whether or not there are actual, like, what the convention would look like and stuff, I don't know if that's spelled out specifically. But they either way, they don't have there are rules as far as what it would take to call a constitutional convention, and it's never been done in our history. We've never been able to get those kind of numbers. Yep, says timeout. Trump as VP, yeah, won't happen. Trump as VP won't happen. Because the 11th Amendment says you must meet all requirements to be president if you are running as vice president. And beyond that, Donald Trump would never play second fiddle to somebody. Katrina says, hey, from Maryland. Yeah, he would never run as VP. He wouldn't want to be somebody's second in command. He wouldn't. He wants the limelight for himself, and they don't have the votes to change the Constitution to give him another term. If they were to somehow make it happen and change the Constitution and lift the 2-term limit, then somebody like Obama could run again. Bush Jr. could run again. And I guarantee you, Donald Trump doesn't want to have to go up against like Obama. Not saying he would run if that restriction was lifted, but could. Do you think he is going to close the Department of Education? No. I think he's going to try. I think he will try to close the Department of Education, but that would take an act of Congress. And Congress would have to pass a law that got rid of the Department of Education. And it ain't happening because those members of Congress have to go back to their voters and get reelected in 2 years. It's just a thing. Everybody in the House has got to get reelected. Plus, they're operating with a 2-seat majority. It's going to be a mental struggle for Trump to make it to a midterms. He's mentally unstable. Exactly. Congress is scared of Trump. They won't hold up to him. No, they're already pushing back against him, though. They're already pushing back against Donald Trump. He wanted Rick Scott as Senate Majority Leader, and they said no. You got John Thune. You had 30 Senate Republicans saying we're not going to confirm Matt Gaetz. They're pushing back. You have members of the House saying we're going to block any attempt to put the House on recess. Democrats will filibuster any chance to put the Senate on recess. Therefore, there's no objection. There's no disagreement between the two houses about recess. We both say we're not going on recess. So guess what, Donnie? No recess appointments. They're only going to have about a 2-seat majority in the House of Representatives as of right now. It's looking like it's going to be, 220 to 215? Something like that. They're going to have a 2 or a 3-seat majority, and at least 3 members of the House have been pulled aside to do other positions within the Trump administration. Or they resigned because they didn't want an ethics report to come out. So, if the Democrats put together and fight, then Democrats could pick up the House in the middle of the session. Yeah, watching Trump pretend to be president 4 years ago when he was tired, he won't last another 4. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's not going to want to do a bunch of this stuff. He's going to rely on his advisors. He's going to rely on his cabinet. They're going to hand him stuff to sign. He's going to sign it. He's going to make a lot of noise. And that's about it. Let's see. Did I miss one here? Yeah. Republicans in Congress, they're going to be pushing back against him. I guarantee it. Because they don't have they don't have any reason to stand beside him, especially if he gets too egregious. They know they have to get reelected. Rebecca, the scary thing is that Vance is putting in the hands of the rich. Yeah, but he's dumb. Democrats will take majority in Congress midterms after 2 years of Trump. Exactly. Exactly. Looks like we got a few more in there. Oh, TJ's already after it. Vance is not likable, can't capture the base, especially in a campaign. Exactly. There's at least a chunk of the Republican. Oh, I know you got this, TJ. Um, I know there's at least a chunk of the Republican base that probably will not vote if Donald Trump's name is not at the top of the ticket. And that's the truth. Um, and they don't really have, unless they have somebody who can gather that much, uh, support. Again, they're not going to win in the midterms. They're not going to win in 2028. I didn't think he would be president. Everything was pointing to the fact that he would never get elected. Rebecca says Vance will be president by 2026. Trump will be forced out or resign. Well, I don't think he'll resign. That's not in his nature. The only way he would resign is if there was some kind of a deal worked out with him and Vance where he makes it up to 2026 or something like that. He resigns and gets a full pardon for the federal stuff. Something like that. But even then, I just don't see his ego allowing him to do that. Randy says there's a lot of people regretting voting for Trump already. Exactly. I don't follow liberal media, actually. Most people knew Trump was going to win. No. No. All the signs were pointing exactly the opposite. Everything was looking to be going against Donald Trump. It's funny how the side that is now saying, Trump won, get over it, cried for 4 years that, Joe Biden isn't their president, FJB, let's go Brandon, all sorts of stuff, begging Donald Trump to come back and to save them because they didn't recognize their own country anymore. And now they're telling us to shut up and deal with reality. Reality is people knew Trump was going to win. America not ready for a female president. I disagree. I think there were a lot of factors that led to her not winning. We live in our bubble for the last couple of years watching our like-minded media. Yeah, that is true. But the media didn't do us any favors. The media did not do us any favors at all. They didn't cover Kamala Harris or Joe Biden the same way they covered Donald Trump at all. They ended up, they were really hard on Kamala Harris and especially Joe Biden. Joe Biden has one bad debate where he appeared to be sick, a little out of it, something. And for 3 weeks they harped on, is he going to drop out? Is he going to drop out? Is he going to drop out? Donald Trump has dementia moments almost daily, but they didn't cover it. You mean our media, the left side media? Yeah, but they did the same thing. America democracy is unique. Presidential elections by the Electoral College. Exactly. Snag that one real quick. Yeah. The Electoral College is weird. It's an old time It's an old compromise, basically. It was a way of separating out the power to vote, and it was a compromise between the idea of appointing a president, similar to how, like, the prime minister in, say, Britain is selected out of the House of Commons, out of the legislature, and a direct vote of the people. And it was like, well, we'll have direct votes in each state, but each state gets a number of electors. It is an old compromise. Is it outdated? Maybe. Some people think that there should be a nationwide popular vote. They are. There's an interstate compact that they are working on where a number of states have agreed that instead of giving their electoral college votes to the winner of their state, they would give it to the winner of the popular vote. And some people seem to think that when they get to enough states to cross the 270 number, that would give us to a nationwide popular vote. Problem is, that kind of a compact, in one part of the Constitution, says Congress has to approve all compacts between the states and all contracts between the states, and then there's another part of the Constitution that says each state can run their own election. So it would end up before the Supreme Court, and who knows how that would end up getting ruled on. Gerald Ford said there would never be a woman president unless the assassination of the president. Yeah, he did say that. And I thought there was a chance Ford could have been wrong. You know, he said that 50 years ago. Times have changed some. I assumed we are getting close to to that point in time as to when we would elect a female president. And that's entirely possible, that we do elect one. I am confident that I will probably live long enough to see one elected. I mean, I don't know what this country has against this idea, but we will have to see how bad the next 4 years go and who runs for the Democrats. I mean, we could see a female president as early as 2028, depending on who the Democrats run and who the Republicans run. If the Republicans crash the economy, doesn't matter who they run, they're not getting reelected. And I keep looking back to history. I look at the stock market crash of 1929 and their mishandling of they didn't cause the stock market crash, but they mishandled everything after the stock market crashed. And then it led to FDR getting elected for 4 straight terms, and then, 2 terms of Truman after? It led to almost 20 straight years of Democrats having the presidential power and almost that entire time also having Congress. Sunset Photography says, I agree with Kamala. She was judged for every little thing she said or did. Meanwhile, Trump got a pass. Exactly. The thing with the media is they gave her so much scrutiny. Everything was under a microscope with her. They did not treat her even close to how she treated Donald Trump. If they would have treated Donald Trump the way that they treated Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, no way Donald Trump gets elected. No way. Because they would have been highlighting how bad he was. Even Fox News knew how bad Donald Trump was getting. They were routinely cutting away from his rally speeches, and they would turn around and give him they would voice over while he's talking because he was off on a tangent and nobody knew what he was saying. I mean, they knew how bad he was. They just didn't want to show their viewers because they knew what their viewers were tuning in for, and all they cared about was making money. Um, yeah, the media did not handle uh, Kamala's, Kamala Harris anywhere near the way she should have been handled as a candidate. And now some people are thinking she might be running in 2028. She hasn't ruled out running again in 2028. And I don't trust polls. Polls have been wrong all the way back to 2016, except for this year. Um, and but there's a poll out that shows her currently as the front runner for 2028 for the Democrats at 41%. Now that's not a huge number, but it's still 8 points up over the next qualified person, which was California Governor Gavin Newsom. And the other thing she might do is run for California governor. Terry's asking, what did she accomplish as vice president? Well, better question. Do you know what the powers of the vice president are? Because I guarantee you probably don't. Vice president has 3 jobs. 3 jobs. No, vice president only has 3 jobs. And that is to preside over the Senate, to take over if something happens to the president and become president, or to notify Congress that the president is incapacitated and they are taking over as president. That's it. Per the Constitution, those are the things that the vice president does. The vice president cannot sign laws. The vice president cannot do any of that. The vice president does not have the same responsibilities as the president. No. Because they can't sign laws. They can't issue executive orders. The powers of the vice president, there are only 3. I see you got that one, TJ. The orange guy said it won't be any more elections. Yeah. It's amazing how many people don't actually understand how our government works. Joe Biden was pretty lucky to get things done with the tied Senate in the first 2 years. Exactly. The reason he was able to get anything passed with the tied Senate in the first 2 years was because Kamala Harris was the tie-breaking vote. As her job of running the Senate, that was what she did. So if the vice president can't do anything, why does being VP qualify her to be president? Well, just because she can't do anything doesn't mean she's not part of the administration. And being part of the administration means you have access to all of the intelligence briefings, you have access to all of the information, and you know everything the president knows, for the most part. And you are there going, okay? Just because she can't sign the piece of legislation doesn't mean she's not involved in help getting it passed through Congress. Working and making deals. One of the reasons Obama was as successful as he was is they sent Joe Biden up to Capitol Hill, where he had a ton of friends in Capitol Hill, and he was able to work out deals and get legislation passed. Rebecca says they made the mistake of not highlighting her more. Exactly. I said at the very beginning that I thought they were going to highlight her from the beginning, assuming Joe Biden wasn't going to run. I typically don't have anybody join my lives. MAGA, America's hard to shake STD. Yeah. Saying don't have somebody join. Yeah, I don't typically have anybody join my lives. I would have a few people that I would consider. That's a pretty short list, though. Might end up setting up something with a couple different people ahead of time where I know we're going to be doing this and doing it live, going into it, and that might be a thing. Yeah, it might be TJ. Uh, but yeah, as far as the vice president, I think they should have showcased her more, had her be front and center more as part of the administration, even though she couldn't do a lot. But you know, Joe Biden should have been sitting down doing FDR style fireside chats and talking about all the good things he got done as president and crowing as loud as he could about the stuff he got done. But he's an old school politician, and uh, he was hoping his record would stand for it on itself, and he didn't want to brag about everything he did. Rebecca says, if you take TJ, you have to take me. I'm his wife. Yeah, that would be interesting. I remember when you two were on the Rational Boomer podcast. That was a great episode. Zach, that legislation that will keep us on track for at least another decade in infrastructure. Sure. Yeah, the Infrastructure Act was great, but I don't think he spent enough time crowing about everything he got done with it. But the Republicans, this is where Democrats screw up their messaging all the time. Republicans can go to Congress, vote against the Infrastructure Act, it still passes, and they go back to their districts when that district gets money from that infrastructure plan and go, look what I brought us to our thing. You know, I helped pay for this bridge through a government grant or whatever. And the Democrats just let them get away with it, hardly ever call them to task. But the Democrats don't do the same in their own districts nearly enough from what I've seen. They don't crow about all the good things they brought from passing that legislation. They just hope it stands on its own. Sunset Photography says, meanwhile, Trump bragged about things, whether he did it or not. Exactly. Exactly. Donald Trump just brags, regardless. Joe Biden failed at messaging. He should have been bragging a lot louder and declare war on inflation. Yeah. I mean, he is an old school politician and thought the record should stand on its own. I used this quote over on the Rational Boomer podcast Sunday when I was on, and it was from the great George Carlin, and he said, think about, because we got a lot of stupid people in this country. Think about it. You know, think about how dumb you think the average person in this country is. The average person. Half this country's dumber than that. And we've got a problem with that. And the Democrats don't message hardly at all. You know, they don't message well. They want their record to stand on its own and for everyone to just go, oh, I see what that thing did for me, and go from there. I mean, I feel like if the Democrats had screamed and walked to the podium saying we will lower the price of they think every American has a brain and does research to look at legislation they pass. Exactly. Exactly. We have an education problem in this country. A lot of people don't understand how the government works. They don't understand politics. They don't even understand, in some cases, where the things we enjoy on a day-to-day basis, where those things come from. You know, the benefits of the EPA, for example, the cleaner air, things like that. Losing 2020 was good for Trump. COVID hurt the economy. Who was there to take the blame? Biden. Yeah, that's part of it. Biden got the blame for cleaning up Donald Trump's mess. Um, yeah, and that's typical Republicans. You know, in my lifetime, we have had what two or three major recessions. We had the recession in right after 9/11. Well, it was heading toward a recession. And then the Republicans did a stimulus check. We had the 2008 housing crisis at the tail end of the Bush administration. Democrats had to uh, fix that. And then you had the 2020 pandemic issue, and Democrats had to fix that too. Trump is scot free. A charges dropped today. What the fuck? Yes. Um, Here's the thing with those charges getting dropped. Jack Smith asked the judges to dismiss the charges with prejudice, which means they can be brought back up. They can be filed again later. Now that's assuming Donald Trump lives to be 82, serves out his term, because there is a DOJ memo that goes back to Watergate that says a sitting president can't be charged because they have to be able to uh, execute their job without worrying about getting charged. Things like that. If Jack Smith had not dismissed these cases and waited for Donald Trump's DOJ to take over, and whoever he would have appointed, or whoever his attorney general would have appointed to take him over, they would have had him dismissed with prejudice, which means they would be done and buried, and that would have been the end of it. It, it was a high school movie. We just had to say eggs would be cheaper. Endgame. Yeah, pretty much. Um, the statute of limitations. I don't know what the statute of limitations are on some of those. I will admit. Um, there is limits to what some of these can be done, and I don't know where those statute of limitations are. But as I said at the very beginning of this live, there is a good chance Donald Trump does not survive 4 years of being president. There is a good chance that if things get bad enough, either his own party impeaches and removes him, or Vance uses the 25th Amendment and removes him. And then once he's no longer president, there is a chance that the remainder of Vance's term, that Vance's DOJ could go after Donald Trump and resume those cases. Outside chance and very, very slim, but it could happen. Uh, well, I can tell who Magnum is based on what he's saying, but I'm going to address the comment anyway. Says he will never be charged and could never have been charged if he didn't run. No, he had been. What happened was Merrick Garland sat on his hands for 2 years, decided not to go after the guy that Joe Biden just beat in an election because it was going to be too political. And then when he finally got enough pressure because the Jan 6 committee released their entire report and he felt pressure that he had to do something. That's when he finally got off his hands and appointed Jack Smith to be a special counsel. And within 10 months, Jack Smith had indictments brought. Donald Trump would have been charged regardless. Yeah. No, Garland didn't want to go after Donald Trump at all. He wanted Donald Trump to go back to Mar-a-Lago and, you know, resign basically to be an everyday citizen. He was going to leave him alone. But yeah, with those cases, yes, they were dismissed today, but they could come back at a later point. Now, the other side of this is that there will be a report similar to the Mueller investigation report that will come out and be issued to Merrick Garland by Jack Smith before the end of Joe Biden's term. And that will be made public, I'm sure. And I can't wait to see what's all in that. It is probably going to be very egregious. We know how bad it potentially could be. I'm more curious about if they name all of the co-conspirators in there and who those sitting members of Congress are that are involved in that report, whatever that comes out. Unfortunately, some of those sitting members of Congress are going to get away with their involvement, at least for now. Now, there is a chance, I think I talked about it earlier, but there is a chance with the special elections coming up. Special elections are very strange in that they're never on the same day, or like they're not on election day typically. They're on, a random Tuesday. And voter turnout's always weird for special elections. You never know what to do with a special election. So there's a chance that the Democrats could end up picking up control of the House in that in the special elections. Rebecca says Jack Smith is literally saving his life right now. His job is obviously forfeit. Yeah. He's doing what he can to close up shop, and it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up back in The Hague prosecuting war criminals, because that's what he was doing before being named as special counsel, which is why I thought he was a great choice, because he's used to going after war criminals and tough people. So he would make a great prosecutor. Wouldn't surprise Rebecca if he leaves the country. Yeah, like I said, I think he might try to go back to The Hague and continue to prosecute war criminals. I will admit I don't know if that's an appointed position or if that is, or how that particular thing works. But it wouldn't surprise me if Joe Biden, if it is an appointed position of some kind, if Joe Biden sends him back there for his own protection. I mean, when it came to being completely impartial, how impartial could you get for somebody who wasn't even living inside the United States during most of what was going on? if not all of what was going on. I don't remember the exact time frame that he was in The Hague, but once had chills thinking of election conspiracies, Jan 6 making my family members dismiss reality. Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm trying to stay away from the conspiracy theories around this election. I'm trying to stick in reality and not get swept up in the idea of, oh, well, what if this or what if that or something's coming and Donald Trump won't be inaugurated until I see some hard evidence that it's going to actually happen. I got to stick with the reality of what is, and that is, as of right now, Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States. Benny says, I hope Democrats win the House. Entirely possible. Special elections get weird, and safe districts aren't always safe in a special election. It is just one of those things. You know, they're only going to, even if none of the seats in special elections flip and the Republicans keep control of the House, they're only going to have about a 2 or a 3 seat margin in the House. And they couldn't get anything hardly passed with a 5 seat margin. They're not going to get much passed in the House. And then it's going to get to the Senate, and it's going to get filibustered by the Democrats. So the filibuster is going to be the big saving grace for the Democrats. I do not see the Republicans nuking it. Just because they just spent the last 4 years in the minority. And they know at any point in time they could be back in the minority again, and they're going to want to have the protection of the filibuster. That's why it's so hard to get rid of. They could try doing some kind of a nuclear option and carve out certain things out of the filibuster, like they did with Supreme Court picks. But the problem with that is when they carve it out, basically that rule is now changed permanently unless they change it back at some point later. So that would mean when the Democrats get in control, whatever legislation they carve out of the filibuster would then also be carved out and allowed to be passed around a filibuster, basically. And again, I just don't see Republicans doing that. You know, a lot of people think this Congress is going to just rubber stamp everything Donald Trump does. Thing is, they have to get reelected. Donald Trump cannot. He cannot get reelected. I've said it multiple times in this live. He only gets 4 more years. Some of these senators want to have, you know, and members of Congress, they want more terms. So they're going to have to justify to their states, to their districts, etc., the stuff they passed and the stuff they didn't. And that's where you're going to see some pushback against Donald Trump. You know, we've already seen some of it. They will get bullied into rubber stamping everything. Except, Nikki, the problem with that is Donald Trump can't gain them anything anymore. He can't gain them anything. The only thing he can do is attempt to threaten them with primaries and having somebody else run against them. That kind of stuff. But a lot of the candidates that Donald Trump backs generally end up failing. In 2022, most of the candidates he backed failed. 2024 was a different story. He had a lot more success, but that's because he was able to tie a lot of the Democrats to Joe Biden and this negative perception of Joe Biden and the economy. Dee says, congratulations, MAGA. The tariffs were announced today by Donnie. Yeah, exactly. The tariffs he's calling for are 25% across the board on everything coming from Mexico and Canada, and 35% on anything coming in from China, minimum. and maybe as high as 60%. Now prices are going to go up because of this, almost immediately, almost immediately, and it is going to crater the economy, and there will be retaliatory tariffs on anything we try to send back across the border, which means they're not going to be buying as much, and we get into a trade war, and it's no good for anybody. Um, Now, the one thing with the tariffs, though, is he says he's putting 25% on Mexico and Canada. But he turned around and went, during his first term, he pulled us out of NAFTA. Um, he pulled us out of NAFTA and renegotiated NAFTA and basically turned around and renegotiated NAFTA to be exactly the same, which is we are in a treaty with Mexico and Canada to not put tariffs on anything coming across the border from either one of them. Now, that would mean he would either have to pull us out of the treaty that he himself helped negotiate, that he said was the best deal he could get, because he's got the art of the deal and he's the best negotiator. And he was going to have to pull us out of that deal and say, well, it's not the best, but it was his deal. Or by treaty, he's not going to be able to put on the tariffs. One of the two. And Omar, how about you just deal with getting blocked? Um, yeah, the tariffs are going to be bad. I'm not going to lie; they're not going to be good for the American economy. Tariffs on China he introduced his first term crippled the metal imports. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of you hear a lot of the right leaning voters, the Republican voters, the MAGAs, they'll say, well, yeah, exactly. We're going to have to build American. The problem is there are some things we can't build here, or some things we can't grow here, like coffee. Um, Somebody pointed out that yes, they grow coffee in Hawaii, but at the rate that just Starbucks sells coffee, they have a 3 month supply of coffee. That's it. We don't grow nearly enough. So coffee would be something that should not have a tariff on it because we can't produce it here. Nikki asks, how will they build more detention camps? Um, one of two ways. I've heard some people say that private companies are building them or planning to build them and then lease them to the federal government. And I've also heard that then the federal government would have to just pass a law to spend money to build them. Um, and they would have to pass something through Congress. Again, they would have to get it through the budget committee. And they are, they would have to go back to their voters and admit that, hey, we agreed for funding for detention camps. I don't know if that would happen, if that would actually happen. Uh, Rebecca says, work for an elevator company and we were in a world of hurt. Are you talking elevators as in the like the people movers up and down, or are you talking about like grain elevators? Coming from a farming state, um, elevator could be either one. At least here for me. If metal and steel skyrocket, good luck. Exactly. Not to mention we get a good chunk of our wood coming from Canada. Ah, the people movers. Yeah. The yeah, if metal in that case, yeah. Um, you know, you guys would be in a world of hurt. with the cost of metal and parts and everything coming from China all going up by 35%. But in the way Donald Trump phrased it over on Truth Social, he says, well, he's going to make them pay a hefty price. He still believes, legitimately believes, that those tariffs are going to be paid by the foreign countries. He doesn't understand how they work. And that's one of the reasons why he won, is he speaks and talks at about a 6th to 8th grade level, and most of his voting base is about the same. And because he seems to understand things in the way they understand it, they think he's brilliant. The rest of us who know what's going on realize how dumb he really is. He's kind of like the kid in like high school running for class president that swears up and down he's going to get vending machines put in every classroom and no more homework ever. And he runs on these fake promises because knowing he can't get them done. And, then his people vote for him because they like the fake promises because they sound like things they want. Yeah, these tariffs are going to hurt us, and they're going to be bad. I'm already, along with a lot of people, I'm only going to buy what I need to buy. I'm already planning to cut back on any unnecessary spending if I can help it. Um, I know I've seen lists out there of the companies that donated to the Trump campaign. If I can avoid shopping in those places, I'm going to. Um, if Trump tries to start international conflicts, they better remove him, and they could, depending on what they, you know, well, he has limited power to use the military before he has to get a declaration of war from the Senate, and all declarations of war and all extended use of military in foreign countries have to go through the Senate. And if he tries to go around that, obviously, again, the Republicans would probably move against him. They like their own power above and beyond everything else. They want their own power, and they're not going to cede the power to declare war to the president. They're just not. If he tries to go too far over what his authority is going to be, they're going to step in and say, no, that's our job. Either they're going to sue him and have the court tell him, no, you can't do that, or they're going to impeach and remove him. They're going to be pushing back against their own guy. And they're even going to be pushing back against some of the crazies in their own caucus. You know, to block some of these bills, like I said, they only have a 2-seat majority in the House of Representatives. For some of the crazy stuff they want to do, it only takes 2 or 3 going to the Democrats and said, hey, we want to kill this bill. We know you don't like this bill. You all vote against it. We vote against it, and it's dead. You know, they need everybody working in unison, and they just don't have that right now. And then after this election, I just don't know who runs and who takes over for the Republicans. Democrats got a deep bench. Republicans really don't. You know, when it comes to 2028, you could have a lot of different people potentially running on the Democratic side. You could have Shapiro, you could have Gavin Newsom, you could have Tim Walz, J.B. Pritzker, you could have Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan. There's a lot of names that are kind of nationwide names already for the Democrats that can run. Problem with the Republicans is they've kind of sidelined anybody who is gaining more support and more prominence than Donald Trump. Kathy Hochul from New York could be. Not as familiar with her, but they've got a deep bench for the Democrats. Republicans don't. I mean, you got to find somebody who would appeal to Donald Trump's MAGA base, which, while simultaneously not, pissing off and getting rid of at least part of the rest of the Republicans. It won't be J.D. Vance. I mean, he could run, but I just don't see him winning. J.D. Vance isn't liked even by most MAGA. He doesn't have the same charisma that Donald Trump does. And if it's as bad as it's looking like it could be, and they crater the economy, J.D. Vance is going to be carrying the stink of a cratered economy with him, much like the appearance of a bad economy was put onto Kamala Harris because people were blaming Joe Biden. Because while the overall economy was good, their day-to-day economy was bad, and people blamed Joe Biden for it. The problem is we will see Trump using social media again. Yeah, he's going to be back to his 3 a.m. tweets and middle-of-the-night nonsense and café and all that bullshit. But the other side of that is, as he gets more and more unhinged and he's doing more of it, maybe some of his followers will actually see how bad things really are with him in charge. I mean, that's an outside hope. That's hoping that they can actually learn. But, as he starts getting more and more unhinged, it's going to be bad. Eventually, the Republicans are going to probably have no choice but sometime in the next 4 years than to remove him. That whole cabinet is pretty much unhinged. I just don't think a lot of them get approved. I don't. I don't think RFK Jr. gets through the Senate confirmation process. I said Matt Gaetz wouldn't make it through. He didn't even get a hearing. He didn't even get the beginnings of an investigation. I don't think Linda McMahon makes it. I don't know if his defense secretary, Hegseth, I don't think he makes it. There's a lot of them that are iffy picks that probably won't make it through. Rebecca says 2 years tops he is removed. Entirely possible. One reason or another. Now, I personally would more or less hope that it would happen prior to the midterms if the Republicans were going to do it. Because if it happens after, then if the Democrats regain the House and the Senate after the midterms, they'll get the blame for removing him. Whereas if he gets removed by the Republicans, the Democrats get no blame that way, basically. He can't be controlled exactly. Well, you can. There's a way to control him, but that's by patting him on the back, telling him he's a genius, and telling him which way he'd look smart if he did something. That's how that's how you can control him. If you can convince him he'd look really, really smart or like a genius doing things one way or the other, that's where you go with him. You can't talk to him like a normal person. He doesn't reason things out. You can't show him facts and figures and hope he understands. Well, Russia and China still control him. Yeah, they do to an extent, but that's in part because they pat him on the back, metaphorically, and tell him he's a genius. And you'll look so smart, in part, and because they have strong authoritarian leaders who are in complete control. And that's what he uh, wants to be. Why would I be embarrassed? I think I know where this is going, but why would I be embarrassed? But you lost everything, but you're still looking outward. Um, I've called the Democrats to task for a lot of things on how they lost this election. They made a lot of mistakes in this election, and what they could have done differently. But I'm looking forward as to what's going to happen next, and what things could happen, what things are good, will happen, etc., and how those things are going to go. There is a difference there. Yeah. No. Yeah. Love how they seem to think that they own the color red. Yeah. Rebecca says, I don't think we are looking outward. We are looking forward based on the outcome. Exactly. We're looking forward at what potentially could happen and going from there. And we're looking at what they are going to do to protect their own power on their side. Though there are things that Democrats can do, you know. Again, when it comes to killing a bill, Hakeem Jeffries, as far as the House, he can only needs to get 2 or 3 members of the Republican Party to side with him to not pass something. Same with passing like budgets and things like that. If they want to keep funding where they are, they can turn around and say, "Hey, you want to pass a budget? We'll give you our entire voting block, etc." And they can keep something passed. Republicans are going to be fighting amongst themselves trying to even pass a budget. I'm thinking it's going to be 2 to 4 years of continuing resolutions of them just keeping the funding kind of where it is. They're going to try to pass stuff, slashing a bunch of spending, and I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think they're going to be able to get rid of many of the departments because they're not going to want to face the backlash from voters. People, they're already hearing about how people are worried and upset about this idea of getting rid of the Department of Education. I just don't think you're going to get enough people in Congress willing to have to go back to their voting base and say, yeah, we killed the Department of Education, but we did it for you, and try to sell it as a win. It's just, a lot of this stuff is going to end up being very bad politically. Max says we're looking at hell. Yeah, it could be, but all we can do is look at what we can accomplish, what they can and can't actually do, because there's a lot of stuff they can't do. They don't have the votes to change the Constitution. They're not going to be able to prevent the next round of voting in the midterms, those kind of things. So because they're not able to do some of that, now it's what can we do to survive to the midterms? Okay, we get the midterms. Democrats take the House and the Senate because typically the party that's in control of the White House loses seats in the midterms, typically. And even if they only lose 3 seats in the midterms, well, Democrats gain control of the House and they would have all of the investigative power. They would be able to do a bunch of the stuff, and tie everything up. And if they get the Senate, then like no judicial nominees get through, no cabinet picks, no insane cabinet picks get through, things like that. We just got to focus on the midterms, and they're coming fast, realistically. By, I would say you would probably have about a year, maybe, till you start hearing a lot of people starting to announce that they're running for their primaries. And you start seeing ads, and stuff like that. So how do you feel about it? About what? You're going to start seeing ads for the midterms. And, you know, Democrats have got to do a better job of getting candidates out there, and getting people running. They need to be more competitive in a lot of seats. You're right, but it seems like a lifetime until the midterms right now. It does. It does. But we have to. The other thing we have to do is kind of keep doing what I've been doing, and that is, you know, doing things like the live, like I'm doing now. Just talking through what they can and can't do, making fun of them for when they fail to pass something, and we need to lay the blame at for the things that hurt us in the economy, like these tariffs. We need to be as loud as we possibly can, putting the blame squarely where it belongs on Donald Trump. And I keep saying it because I don't know what else to go back to, but I look at what happened in the Great Depression and the stock market crash. If they crater the economy nearly as bad as what they think, as what we think it could happen, you could give Democrats control of the presidency and the Congress for 10, 15, 20 years. No, I don't add any. I typically don't add anybody into my lives. I only I would only do. There's only certain people I would add in, and that would be planned well in advance. Rebecca says, again, you were right, but we only spread our message to the like minds. Yeah, but there's more of us than there are of them. The problem, one of the problems I've said Kamala Harris had is she shifted too far to the right, especially at the end of the campaign. She was spending a lot of time campaigning with Liz Cheney, things like that, trying to draw in disenfranchised Republicans at the cost of the voters on the far left. We just need to get our voters in line on our side and bring in basically and just say, hey, this is our platform. We're running on this. If you don't like voting for Donald Trump, vote or Republicans right now with how bad as they are, here's our policy. We are the alternative. Instead of trying to open the umbrella big enough to bring in everybody, we just have to. They need to come along for the ride, basically, because there's enough of us on the left that she should have won easily, hands down. But I think part of it was that she went too far to the right and lost some of her dedicated voters on the left. I know that wasn't the entirety of the issue. There's a lot of issues with why she didn't win. But I think that was part of it. And if we can get everybody under that same umbrella, like all of the people on the left, those that are on the right, if they are disenfranchised bad enough by Donald Trump, they'll come along, or they won't vote for the presidential race. One of the two, which is still a better option than voting for whoever runs in 2028 for the Republicans. Nikki says, don't blame me about planning the guests out. I do that more. Couple of reasons. One, I record all of my lives, and they go up over on my YouTube page. I am analytical Iowan over on YouTube as well. There is a link tree in my bio. Um, and this will be up later there. I do that. I pick the guests that way a little bit. Well, I haven't done one yet. Two, I'm not entirely sure how the guest format works and all that. I'm still relatively new to doing lives, and you never know who you're going to get. Um, I want to make sure I know the person and know what kind of a viewpoint I'm going to get in ahead of time. Rebecca says you agree, but again, she literally needed to address the economy and said we will make eggs cheaper. Yeah, I think she spent too long saying the economy was good when the big numbers, the big picture economy numbers were great. Um, but the like the day-to-day stuff was bad. Rebecca says TJ and her will be guests. Yeah, probably at some point. Um, I've had people ask me when I'm going to start a podcast too, and I haven't decided. I might be doing one of those eventually as well. But no, you're right though. She she didn't spend enough time focusing on the everyday economy items. She did talk about making things more affordable, like housing and stuff. But she was also saying, well, the economy's good. So she was saying both sides of it, I think, and I think her message got lost in there. I mean, the big picture economy numbers looked great, but we appreciated you mentioning him out, Rational Boomer. Oh, yeah, I'll probably be back over on the Rational Boomer podcast. Um, you guys know I guest over there quite frequently. It was just on yesterday. I was yesterday's guest, and I'll probably be on again in a week or two. Um, it's always a great conversation, and you know, always have a good time. She wasn't lying. She just didn't appeal to the dumber audience. Yeah, exactly. Um, and you mean no disrespect. I know what you mean. She just wasn't appealing to the audience that was only worried about their day to day, their day to day economics. I mean, I don't know very many people that I work with, I interact with on a daily basis that have money in the stock market. I just don't. Other than uh, like 401ks or something like that. And um, when you're saying, well, the economy's good because the stock market's up, they're looking at it going, well, how does that affect me? Especially you're talking to young people who are 18 to 25, and the only money they have is in their 401k, if they have one. As far as stock market money, I can tell you from what I remember of being that age, I didn't care how my 401k was really doing. Not really. I had people telling me at the time, just put in a base amount, check out it about once a year, see if you're making any money. Don't worry about it day to day, because it's going to go up, it's going to go down, but overall, just see how you're doing year to year. Rebecca says, if you can't afford groceries, you don't have a 401k or don't care about it. Exactly. Like, even at some of my lowest points, when I considered scaling back my 401k donations, I really thought long and hard about, do I really want to put money into my 401k? And I wasn't worried about whether or not that was making money. It was, am I going to go buy my next? Where how am I getting my next meal paid for? And I will admit, at the time, a lot of the reasons I was in that mess was my own doing. It had nothing to really do with the economy per se at the time. But I was still more worried about groceries and rent and those kind of things than I was about making money in the stock market. I mean, even a couple of years ago when I worked for a company that had stock options and stuff and I was making great money, I did have a few shares of stock. I could have cared, as long as it was kind of making a little bit of money. That's all. I only cared about that one particular stock because it was only for the company I worked for. I only cared if we were making money. I didn't care about the stock market as a whole. Not even close. I was mostly worried about whether or not I could pay my bills and digging myself out of debt. That's all I cared about. And that's the kind of stuff I think whoever runs in 2028 is probably going to need to run on. Another version of the New Deal, some sort of major economic plan. To Rebecca's point, the collective we are dumb about civics and governance. Yeah, there's a lot of people that have no idea how the government works. Small towns haven't seen inflation go down because they don't have competition. Yeah, pretty much. One of the companies I would love to not support anymore is Walmart. Problem is, in my small town, for the most part, if you want clothes, you're going to Walmart unless you're ordering it online. Or you're driving 15, 20 minutes away. And my town's not overly small, but small enough. And like the only other option is a like a country store type that's got a lot of your farm stuff, and they've got some clothes as well. But you're talking, a shirt like this would be $20, $25, where it's 10 to 15 at Walmart. And I don't have much of a choice without driving anywhere to shop anywhere else. I would love to shop somewhere else. There's a couple small towns not very far from me where their only grocery store of any kind in the town is the gas station. That's all they got for whatever little bit of grocery items you can get in the convenience section of the gas station. And other than that, you got to drive to a bigger town to get anything. Yeah, so that gas station can charge whatever they want. Exactly. Um, but even here in the town I'm in, we've got multiple gas stations, uh, two grocery stores plus Walmart, and I still see people paying the higher price at the gas station just because they're there, and they'll pay the $5 or whatever for a gallon of milk that the gas station's charging because they're there. They don't want to make another stop. But then some of those same people will complain that prices are too high. Well, you made the choice to shop at the most expensive place in town because you were there. Um, and now the prices are going to go up with the tariffs. Now that we know for sure what his plan is. Let's see. Tori says, I just got a gallon of milk for $2.99 in Chicago. Exactly. Exactly. Like, it's high. I mean, I remember when you could get milk for 99 cents a gallon, and that was considered high. or like a $1.29 or whatever was considered high. But that's just the price of where things have gone up. It's, some of these people will shop at the most expensive store and then complain about how much they're spending. It's some of it, not all of it, but some of it is their shopping habits. They choose to buy things at the more expensive place. Or the people who will complain about how expensive it is to get like fast food from a restaurant or something, but then they'll order it through something like DoorDash, where you're between delivery fee and tip and the upcharge from the restaurant, because a lot of them charge more if you're doing delivery base before you even get to the delivery fee. Well, it's $10-15 more expensive than going to the restaurant itself, but then they'll complain that, well, they've gotten just so outrageously overpriced. Well, yeah, you paid for delivery, you paid for the tip, etc. You knew those things. You can't rope those into the cost of it because you made that choice. If you had gone there and picked it up yourself, it would have been cheaper. Half gallon of eggnog costs more than a gallon of milk. I wouldn't know. I don't drink eggnog. Never have. Never liked the look of it. Just never seemed appetizing. A lot of people seem to love it. I've just never had any desire to try it. All right, well, I'm going to probably wrap this up here shortly. Probably go a few more minutes yet, but I'm getting ready to wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to join me for this conversation. It's been great. For those of you that came in later into the conversation, into my live, I record all my lives. They will be up at some point, probably at this point tomorrow sometime, over on my YouTube channel, Analytical Iowan on YouTube. I do have a link tree in my bio now. There's a link for YouTube. So if you want to catch the entirety of the live in this great conversation, that will be available. I do post almost all my lives. I don't think I've missed one yet. I want to thank TJ the plumber, my great moderator. Did a great job of keeping the chat clear. That way we didn't have to deal with a lot of the MAGA riffraff, because all they do is say things that don't add to the conversation, like stop your crying or Trump 2024, and they mass report you and get your lives taken down, get your videos taken down, all kinds of stuff. I know creators who've gotten 10-day bans because of them. And because a lot of them, when you start saying things they don't like about their Lord and Savior, they start mass reporting you, and then TikTok takes you down. You talk about who got the ban. One of them was the Rational Boomer. He went live one night last week. Yeah, like Mike. I think he got a 10-day ban because of them. He was only live for about half an hour before they had mass reported him enough to get taken down. And that's with TJ and Gray Captain and Mike himself trying to block as many people as he could, and still just couldn't get them all. They kept mass reporting. So but want to thank everybody for taking the time to join the live. Like I said, this whole thing will be up over on my YouTube page. I am Analytical Iowan over on YouTube. This will be up over there probably tomorrow by the time YouTube ends up loading it in its entirety. Um, I also have a small section of what I call government answers videos. It's on a playlist by itself where I see people get things wrong about how the government works or what parts of the government are in comment sections or just in videos, etc. And then I make a video about it, about how it actually works. Trying to just clear up what some common misconceptions, things like that. About term limits and about um, how the line of succession works and all sorts of things. That is over there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I thank everybody for joining me, and I will catch you guys the next time I go live. All right. Just got done wrapping up. Had another good live. And thank you guys for taking the time to watch and listen.